So first, what is a UTM? So UTM stands for Urchin Tracking Module. And as you can see on the screen, there's a sample landing page URL. If we populate it a little bit, we can highlight some of these UTM parameters. So if you've ever seen one of these, after clicking through an ad, the URL in your browser actually is like this really long string that has all these different parameters. What those parameters are doing is tracking where this traffic is coming from. So you can see, for example, it says source is Google, UTM medium is paid search, and so on. So basically what the UTMs are a way for the site to track and categorize the traffic that's coming through to the site. So like I was mentioning, this will allow analytics tools to slice and dice this data and really give you those insights that you're looking for. One thing to mention is these are standalone tools and they are third-party cookie proof. So you've likely read that third-party cookies are going to be going away in Chrome in a year or two. They've pushed it out a little bit, but probably a year or two. When those do go away, UTMs will still be utilized and will still allow you to track and categorize traffic to your websites. So what are the parameters? What can we actually track? So there are 5 main UTM parameters. There's source, medium, campaign, term, and content. One thing to keep in mind is, of course, it's great to use all UTM parameters. Utilizing all of them will allow you to slice and dice a little bit more granular as you go. But if you don't know how to populate each of these fields, don't stress about it. Try to utilize just the most heavily used and the most important fields to track your data coming through. And as you go, you can start populating things like term and content. So let's talk about the different parameters. So the first one is UTM source. So this is essentially the platform or the network that the data is coming from. So the big brand name, for example. So some samples would be Google, Facebook, TikTok. You want to make sure that you have these selected and named properly and utilizing uniform names for them. For example, you want to use Facebook all the time. You don't want to use FBook or FB. So you can actually track that data through your site and keep it in one bucket. So this is the most important UTM parameter. Without this, you'll have a hard time classifying it by different channels. So the next one is medium. So rather than the actual vendor that it's coming from, it's telling you essentially what that vendor is or what type of traffic that is. So examples would be paid social versus organic social. So you might have Facebook as your source, but your medium might be paid social or your medium might be organic social. It's just a way to separate your different data sources to get that level of granularity that will help you decide what's working and what's not. So another example might be paid search versus organic search. You want to just make sure that everything is tracked properly. And Pat actually has a tip that he'd like to chime in for this one.
Yeah, just for, it's basically the benefit of these is you set things that you will remember the meaning of. That's the entire point of it. So everything that comes from paid sources, in the medium, I try to tag with a paid hyphen prefix. So I can separate everything I want to look at from all the other sources that produce traffic really easily, and also kind of just cut down on the tough conversations I have with like other people and what they're setting for their mediums as well.
Great, thanks, Pat. So the next one is UTM campaign. So as it says in the name, this is your campaign name or campaign ID for each of these campaigns within that source medium combination. So an example would be if you have 5 Facebook campaigns, for example, you might not want to have them all clustered as just Facebook because maybe they have different goals, different tactics, different ads within them. So you want to be able to parse those out in your reporting so you don't have them all clustered together. So utilizing campaign names will allow you to do that. So some examples would be Black Friday, Cyber Monday, 2-day shipping, etc. And one tip here is to not utilize spaces or special characters when you're actually creating these UTMs and populating the parameters. Those, when translated into HTML code, will put some fairly funky characters in your landing page URL that could cause a lot of confusion and potentially errors, actually. So UTM term. So in a general sense, this is for capturing search keywords. So some examples would be apparel, accessories, bracelets, just really populating the terms that you're using to target these customers. Put that in the term field, which will allow you to actually slice and dice and figure out which search terms are working the best for you. But term isn't just used for search. That's like the primary use case. But you could put in your ad sets or your ad set IDs that will allow you to actually ladder up more to the ad set data outside of your search channels. And lastly, we have UTM content. So this is a great way to get ad level characteristics and data into your analytics tools. So you might have, let's use that Facebook example. You have 5 different campaigns. They have different tactics. They have different ads in each of them. Maybe they're not sharing ads, they're each using specific ads. But you want to learn which of those ads are working best for you. So you should try to tag those with names or IDs that allow you to direct those performance numbers back to a specific ad. And the tip that we have is you could utilize IDs rather than names. So if your ad name changes, the ID will not. So utilizing that ID will allow you to track it back to, if you have multiple iterations of names of that ad, the ID will be a one-to-many mapping that you could use in your analytics tools. So let's start building.